for your coming along and joining us this afternoon. So the purpose of this session is to really give you some support and insight into what we call a vital part of our application process. We've now got various sections, and we've built in an impact section. And a big part of that, one of our core questions in that, is around circular economy. And it's something that we know everybody wants to do more around, but people sometimes don't always know what's the right things or best things to do. So the purpose of this session today is we've got Peter MacArthur here from Zero Waste Scotland. Peter's going to take you through a session just all around the circular economy. And I'm sure there'll be lots of things in there that you can consider and take forward and learn, both to help you in your application form, but also to help you just generally in your business when you're sort of taking that forward and looking to do the right things as you grow your business. There'll be lots of learnings in there that will be really beneficial. We've partnered now with Zero Waste Scotland, I think it's 4 or 5 years, Peter, I think. And that relationship strengthened quite considerably over the past couple of years. And one of the things we've also got in the Scottish Edge competition now is our Circular Economy Edge Award, which specifically awards and funds and supports a top rated business in terms of circular economy. And we work really closely with Peter and the team at Zero Waste Scotland to get support for that. We'll have people from Zero Waste Scotland helping with the judging part of it. So there's a real incentive there as well for businesses that really want to push on in their sort of circular agenda. So the next 45 minutes, Peter's going to take you through some really good information, and then we'll have the opportunity to ask some questions. As you're going through, if there's anything that comes up, please use the chat function and ask away. Myself and Jack will try and deal with them. Or if there's anything we think is worth a discussion at the end, we'll chat that later towards the end of the session. But again, it's just to sort of tune in, pick all the good bits out of what Peter's got. And Jack, Peter, we're going to share slides and recordings at the end. We can do that, yeah?
Yep, we'll make the recording available shortly afterwards. We can send that link.
You'll be able to get access to all this afterwards, so you can sit and enjoy the session. So thanks again for joining us, and Peter, just to hand over to you now, and you can take it from there.
All right, brilliant. Thanks, Stephen. All right, just afternoon, morning, lunchtime, I guess, everyone. Thanks for having me. Just while I'm pulling my slides up. No, just bear with me 1 minute. I minimized the screen before. Yeah, so I'm Peter MacArthur. I lead on the Circular Economy Business Support Service at Zero Waste Scotland. And what I've got for you today is really just a bit of a kind of an introductory session on circular economy. Some of it you might know, some of it might be totally new, but really what the session's kind of intended to do is to provide a bit of an overview of some of the kind of key themes and terminology, and start to develop a bit of a consistent understanding. So the session is split into 2 parts. Kind of the first part is an overview and an introduction to circular economy, and then the second part is some much more practical examples of how you can actually implement it in your own business. And we've got some case studies as well to try and bring it to life. And yeah, hopefully you'll find it interesting. Hopefully it'll be inspiring. But we've got some time at the end for Q&A. So if we want to get into any specifics a bit more, then we can do so. And I should maybe apologise as well, because there's usually a colleague that delivers a session along with me, but it's just me today. So hopefully my voice won't go, and hopefully you won't get too tired of me just sort of droning on at you, particularly over lunchtime. Anyway, so for anyone who doesn't know Zero Waste Scotland, we in short are an independent body that operates via funding from the Scottish Government and also from the European Union. And we exist to lead Scotland to use products and resources responsibly, focusing where we can have the greatest impact on climate change, accelerating and supporting Scotland's just transition to a circular economy. And we work through partnerships like this with Edge, but we also commission a lot of evidence and insight. And our goal really is to try and inform policy and to motivate individuals and business to embrace the environmental, economic, and social benefits of a circular economy, which are many and varied. So what is a circular economy? Before we answer that question in specifics, it's really just about thinking differently. It's a new approach to kind of problem solving and looking at the challenges that are facing business and facing us in terms of climate change and the ongoing climate emergency, and then kind of innovating and looking at creative solutions to tackle a lot of those problems, while also still being able to deliver products, services, and commercial kind of opportunities in a way that is sustainable and more resilient as well. So just to wake us up slightly, just a little bit of fun and to get us thinking a little bit differently, I've got a bit of a pop quiz. If you want to just stick answers in or suggestions in the chat, or just shout them out, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll just kind of blast through this. And I've given you the answer because I've clicked too many times. The question was going to be, on average, what percentage of its life is a standard domestic car used for? Spoiler, it's only used for about 88%. The rest of the time it's parked up, and that's a pre-COVID and a pre-lockdown statistic as well. But the reason for kind of having this in here is just to get us thinking about the concept of kind of idle assets. There's a lot of embodied value and carbon locked up in an asset like a car, similar things across various different sectors and industries. And if it's just kind of sitting there not being used, that is essentially a wasted resource. So there are kind of circular economy approaches that we can use to tackle that and get more value from existing assets without necessarily having to buy sort of specific things every time. So the second one then, on average, how many minutes is a standard domestic household drill used for in its lifetime? And I won't spoil it this time. Does anyone get any thoughts on that? Just shout out. All right, so we've got 180 minutes from Craig, 200 minutes, 50 minutes. We're heading in the right direction. 10, we've gone back up to 120, 30. Okay, so the answer actually is 13 minutes on average, and that's a domestic household drill. So again, there's an element of kind of idle assets there, but also the reason this kind of example is in here is to get us thinking about outcomes rather than products. So generally, people aren't that bothered really about having a drill. It's not the drill they want. It's a hole in the wall, or it's a shelf or whatever. So the drill is just a means to an end. So kind of circular economy approaches would start to look at how, as businesses, we can deliver outcomes rather than just necessarily sell everyone up and down the country a drill. Are there smarter ways to do that? And then finally, from farm to fork, what percentage of food do we think is wasted? And this is a UK statistic, but the principle does apply globally. This is actually a bit of a well-known stat now, I think. So yeah, we've got 50%, 60%, 25% there, I think, from Jamie. So the answer, just to keep us moving, is 33% is wasted, 66% used. And that in itself, I think, would be bad enough. But what we're trying to think about here is not just the end, the end result of throwing that food away. It's actually the resources that go into growing that food, shipping it, up and down the country, around the planet. It's all of the resources and the energy and the time and the resources that go into producing that food. And then ultimately, if it is, it's just going to be thrown away. It's not just an apple or a banana that's going to waste. It's that entire kind of history and that entire supply and value chain. So again, how can we think about maximizing the value of those resources, wasting less in the first place, but actually being a bit smarter with things that we do ultimately have to throw away, and how can we use them differently? So yeah, hopefully that was just a little bit of fun and just thinking about some of these issues a little bit differently. But to get into the meat of it then, what is a circular economy? Essentially, it's a systemic shift in the way that we think and design products, and it's based on the three principles that you can see there. And essentially, what we want to do is get from the diagram on the left all the way over to the diagram on the right. And you can see from that, hopefully, that it is about more than just recycling. Recycling is a key part of a circular economy, but essentially all it's doing is kind of pushing a fundamental problem further down the road. We need to get to this stage where actually everything is fully valued and fully cycled, and we're doing that kind of from day one in terms of design and looking ahead. So we do live in a world of finite resources. The global population is growing, and consumption growth is driving increased volatility in the supply of raw materials, as well as damaging environmental impact. So Zero Waste Scotland's done some research in Scotland that calculates that about 80%, that's 4/5 of Scotland's carbon footprint, comes from consumption. So our consumption is unsustainably high. And when we talk about consumption, what we mean there is the products and materials that we're manufacturing, using and throwing away. So it covers every stage of that life cycle. So again, thinking back to the food waste example. And projections indicate that if we continue on our current trajectory, in 30 years, we'll be creating 70% more waste than we do now, which obviously is fundamentally unsustainable. So this is all a legacy of our traditional linear approach to the economy, and that linear approach is based on extraction, use, and then disposal, essentially in pursuit of growth. So it's take, make, dispose. But a circular economy can provide a solution to that by making a fundamental shift in how we design products and services. Circular thinking can offer new and exciting perspectives that decouple growth from material and resource use. So instead of that take, make, dispose, in a circular economy, activity is based on the continuous circulation of products and materials. And it's actually a model that eliminates, or at the very least redefines, the concept of waste. So we're really aiming to maximize material value at all stages of the life cycle. And it's kind of mirroring, what we see in nature, where one of the main principles is that sort of waste is food, or waste is nutrients, and that if you think about the kind of rainforest, at every stage of that ecosystem, something is used by something else as a resource or as a food, and then ultimately everything is kind of returned to the soil and composts, turns into nutrients, and then is all kind of drawn back up again, and the whole cycle starts again. So that's sort of the model. But a circular economy is still an industrial economy, but it's restorative by intention and design. So I guess one of the kind of key principles is that we look at materials and products as temporary stores or repositories of materials that will subsequently become the inputs for new products at the end of their usable life. And to kind of illustrate that, to take an example, in the past 5 years in Scotland, we'll have imported about £50 million worth of gold. But that's in other products like phones, laptops, tablets, TVs, a whole manner of things really, but it's locked away in there. And obviously gold is a finite resource, it's a valuable resource, but we'll recover just a small fraction, a tiny fraction actually, of that gold. And the rest of it will either be lost to kind of landfill in the worst case, or it might just be hanging about in the back of drawers, the bottom of wardrobes or up in attics and whatever, because we tend to hold on to things and not quite know what to do with them. But actually, in a circular economy, we would have systems in place to properly take back those products, deconstruct them, and access the valuable materials that are embedded in them. So yeah, imagine instead that gold could be recovered, reused, and kept in circulation. And yeah, I think I've said this already, but just to kind of finalize, really, the concept of waste is eliminated by carefully designing products and industrial processes in such a way that materials are viewed as nutrients in a perpetual flow, and we can constantly access them back. So that's kind of our take on what a circular economy is. I've got a short video, which is from the MacArthur Foundation, and it provides a really kind of clear and hopefully accessible overview of the circular economy and some of the key concepts that we'll talk about a little bit later on. So I will, fingers crossed, play this for you now.
Living systems have been around for a few billion years and will be around for many more. In the living world, there's no landfill. Instead, materials flow. One species' waste is another's food, energy is provided by the sun, things grow, then die, and nutrients return to the soil safely. And it works. Yet as humans, we've adopted a linear approach. We take, we make, and we dispose. A new phone comes out, so we ditch the old one. Our washing machine packs up, so we buy another. Each time we do this, we're eating into a finite supply of resources and often producing toxic waste. It simply can't work long term. So what can? If we accept that the living world's cyclical model works, can we change our way of thinking so that we too operate a circular economy? Let's start with the biological cycle. How can our waste build capital rather than reduce it? By rethinking and redesigning products and components, and the packaging they come in, we can create safe and compostable materials that help grow more stuff. As they say in the movies, no resources have been lost in the making of this material. So what about the washing machines, mobile phones, fridges? We know they don't biodegrade. Here, we're talking about another sort of rethink, a way to cycle valuable metals, polymers, and alloys so they maintain their quality and continue to be useful beyond the shelf life of individual products. What if the goods of today became the resources of tomorrow? It makes commercial sense that form our infrastructure and economy coming together. It's about energy. It's about rethinking the operating system itself. We have a fantastic opportunity to open new perspectives and new horizons. Instead of remaining trapped in the frustrations of the present, with creativity and innovation, we really can rethink and redesign our future.
Right. I think we might. I don't know if we got Zoom bombed there halfway through, but hopefully the Alan MacArthur video held your attention.
Apologies for that. I don't know what happened there, and that wasn't someone. I don't know where they came from. So apologies for that.
2 years of lockdown, and I never once experienced it, and here we are. Never mind. So yeah, if the video did get disrupted, don't worry, I'll send the link and everything, or Stephen or Jack will send the link around with the slides, so you can access that one after. But hopefully that kind of give you just a bit more of a succinct perspective on some of the themes and the ideas. So that's what a circular economy is. I mean, in terms of benefits, why should we be thinking about it? So we've kind of come up with 5 at Zero Waste Scotland from a business kind of facing point of view. The first of them is removing supply chain risks. So through our work in delivering the business support service, we're out there a lot speaking to companies, and we heard from a business recently who said that during the COVID pandemic, the price of cardboard that they had to purchase in for their business had increased by 600%, which clearly is enormous. And I don't think it's exactly news that we're currently experiencing increased price inflation and living through an energy price crisis. And obviously that in turn will drive up costs across everyone's supply chain. So if you have a reliance on a continuous flow of materials, you are open to significant price increases or supply chain collapse even. And circular economy, by maintaining kind of access to materials in the way that I spoke about before, can reduce or at least remove to some extent your reliance on material inputs and reduce your exposure to this risk. So the second benefit is meeting customer demand, and increasingly, yeah, we're seeing that consumers are demanding action. I think we're all probably aware of that around sustainability and climate. So businesses need to be seen to address those demands, and I think that not taking note of that demand could potentially mean that, you know, competitors become the favoured option. A couple of stats just to sort of reinforce that. There was a recent Accenture survey that reported that more than 1/3 of businesses surveyed couldn't keep up with consumer demand for sustainable products and services. And Nielsen also conducted a report that concluded that 66% of consumers say they're willing to pay more for sustainable brands. So there's obviously, you know, an appetite and a market out there. Once you meet that customer demand, circular economy potentially allows you to retain your customers and change the dynamic that you have with your customers. So services like repair and refurbishment, for example, or leasing or sharing products rather than just selling single-use items means that customers will look to you for ongoing support and maintenance. You will have an ongoing kind of dialogue and relationship with your customer, and they may even return the product directly to you for an upgrade or a replacement or whatever the model is. So you can keep your customers close, and there's an opportunity there, I think, to constantly meet evolving needs, which again can kind of change how we operate as businesses. And just, yeah, a little throwaway really. So Forbes research has revealed that 88% of customers will be more loyal to a company that supports social or environmental issues. So there's definitely an opportunity there. And speaking of opportunities, companies moving towards a circular economy are generally innovating. They're thinking differently. Like we said before, and opening kind of new revenue generating possibilities. So there's the opportunity to reach new markets. You can diversify your business, strengthen and future-proof it. And we'll see some kind of specific examples of that in just a few minutes. And then finally, hopefully it goes without saying, but one of the main driver, if not the main driver, behind sustainable business practice is the positive impact that we can have on the environment. So all of the kind of horrifying stats around there being more plastic in the sea than fish by 2050, and that species extinction is now happening 100 times faster than the natural evolutionary rate. And you don't have to look too far in the press or in the news to kind of hear about wildfires, extreme heat and sustained droughts all becoming a regular occurrence. And these are all obviously impacts of climate change. So sustainability shouldn't be viewed just as a tick in a box, but it really needs to be embedded into how we do business. And that is where the circular economy comes in. So that's the what, and to some extent the why. What about the how? So we have, Zero Waste Scotland have identified 9 circular strategies, which are detailed here. I won't dwell on this too long because I'm going to briefly cover all of the 9. But just to kind of put them into context, on the top row of this slide here, we've got 3 kind of overarching principles, if you like, rather than strategies. So design, resource recovery, and enabling technologies are things which kind of fundamentally underpin a lot of the circular economy concepts. And then the 6 specific strategies underneath are ways that those can be put into practice more practically within a business context. So I should have got a glass of water, but never mind. I'll run through the 9 now, and for each of the strategies, we've also got a case study that hopefully illustrates it a little bit for you. So circular design is about thinking about your product really from the outset. Consider repair, reuse, recycling, and repurposing when you're designing a product. And how can you ensure that the product will stand the test of time by using kind of the right quality materials? Can it be easily repaired? Can elements of it be replaced? Is it kind of modular or upgradable? And when it finally does reach the end of its life, what is the process for dealing with that? Can it easily be dismantled? Can it be repurposed or remanufactured? And can the individual components be reused or recycled? So Sofa for Life is a really good example of this, actually. So they were a Scottish-based startup who received support from Zero Waste Scotland and Edge, I think, and they designed a sofa with modular add-ons, so things like exchangeable covers and cushions, so that it can be adapted over the years to suit the user's needs. The base can be expanded, so it can go from being a 2-seater to a 3-seater, or even to kind of a corner sofa. And the idea is that it is a piece of furniture that can grow and evolve and be adapted to changing needs. But everything that is in it is also quite natural, organic, can be kind of recycled or reused again at a component level. So I think the next slide is actually another video. Yes, it is, which will just kind of give you another kind of living example of how circular design principles, or thinking about circular design principles from the outset, can completely revolutionize how you deliver a product or a service. So this company is Notpla, and they've embedded circularity into a packaging solution. So I'll play that for you now. So that's another really nice example, I think, of some really creative thinking, and also, obviously thinking about new technologies and kind of the bioeconomy and alternative materials as well. So it brings quite a lot of elements in. So our next strategy is resource recovery, another kind of fundamental one. And essentially, this is quite a simple concept, really. So you take a waste or a byproduct or a co-product, and that can be a material that either you own, or it's another company's, but you then turn that into something with a higher value. And the waste could be a food or a drink byproduct like whey or spent brewery grain, or it could be offcuts of fabric, offcuts of wood or metal, or any other material really that's used in the manufacturing process. And our case study for this is Revive Eco, who you may be familiar with. So they're a Glasgow-based company run by 2 graduates from Strathclyde Uni, and they initially developed the idea as part of a university project. But what Revive do is they collect used coffee grounds from cafes and restaurants, and they use them as a sustainable soil enhancer. And more recently, they're also researching, and actually I think they've implemented now the opportunity to extract oils and amino acids from the coffee grounds, which are quite high value materials, and they can be used in the cosmetics and the pharmaceutical industry as a replacement for palm oil. So again, just a really kind of great example of how a material that is actually a problem for one sector or industry can be used in another, and can have a lot of value extracted from it. Enabling technologies is the third of our kind of overarching principles, and what this really means is it's looking at the way that new technology can transform the way we do business. So things like robotics, machine learning, big data, blockchain, many other technological phrases that I don't really understand, but there's lots of different ways that technology can enable or improve things. To take a couple of more basic examples, I guess we could look at Netflix or Spotify, and the idea there is that the platform development and streaming ability has removed the need for physical DVDs or CDs. And if we look at kind of robotic development, Apple have now developed a disassembly robot, which is capable of dismantling discarded iPhones in 11 seconds and separating the component parts into usable materials. So yeah, any enabling technology basically is anything that allows us to do something a bit more effectively or a bit more sustainably. So it could be a physical technology or a more data-driven technology. And our case study is on the data side. So Reith, they're an asset tracking startup, and they're pretty big in the reuse economy, where tracking assets is essential to ensure traceability and to monitor how often items are being reused. And that's obviously for kind of reporting and safety purposes, but also commercially, you need to know where your stuff is. So good examples of how this technology, or what this technology would enable, are things like tracking and reusing packaging, so pallets, bottles, crates, or it could be applied to higher value items as well, like NHS equipment, so things like crutches, wheelchairs, any other kind of mobility equipment really that is distributed, and then ideally you would want to come back in. So that's enabling technology. And next we have product as a service, and this is where we kind of start to get into some of the more radical, I suppose, ways of delivering things differently that circular economy can facilitate. So this strategy requires us to take a step back and ask the question: do companies really need a product? Do individuals really need a product, or do they need a solution? So thinking back to that drill example from the quiz at the beginning, does a farmer, for example, really need pesticides? Does an office really need a photocopier? Well, actually, the answer is probably no in both cases. The farmer really just wants a pest-free crop. That's the outcome. And the office really just wants paper printouts. Again, that's the outcome, although that's maybe not the best example in terms of material sustainability. So yeah, take that one with a pinch of salt. But hopefully you get the idea. The pesticides and the photocopier are just a means to an end. And as a result, it makes sense that companies should charge, therefore, for the service rather than for the product. And we have an example of a company in Scotland that's doing just that, which is Egg Lighting, who offer lighting as a service. So their circular offering is built around providing lighting with zero upfront cost. So you get a lifetime performance guarantee and the potential to upgrade to more efficient lighting as LED technology advances. It's a no purchase agreement. So basically, instead of buying a light fitting, Egg install and maintain ownership of the fitting, you're paying, or the customer is paying, an ongoing service agreement basically for the light that you use, and that can be measured in lumens or in kind of watts per hour or however. So it's a fascinating example, and it's built around the output of the product rather than the physical product itself. But I'm sure, as you can imagine, that requires a pretty big, sea change in terms of how we view consumption and how we view products and services to shift away from ownership. So next up we have leasing, which is kind of similar in a way, connected to product as a service, but it frames it in a slightly different way. So like product as a service, it means that ownership of a product is maintained by the manufacturer rather than being taken on by the consumer. but it's less about an outcome-driven approach. So the ongoing kind of reliability and eventual post-use value of the product becomes important to the manufacturers. So that a leasing model potentially can push manufacturers to consider the whole lifespan in their initial design and development, because ultimately they are going to be responsible for taking that item back or that product back at the end of its life and having to do something else with it. So we want to make it as durable and long lasting as possible. And this is a model that we see quite often now. It's becoming increasingly common, which is good, or increasingly mainstream in the kind of textile and the clothing sector. So the example we've got here is Graceful Changes, who are a company based in Edinburgh, again, a company that Zero Waste Scotland's worked with. It's a small family-run business offering a clothing rental service, specifically for babies and children. And the reason that they targeted that market is because babies and children grow out of their clothes much more quickly. So the turnover and the purchase of new products that they're trying to displace potentially would be higher. So they offer a subscription service. Each subscriber has access to an online inventory, or an online wardrobe, I think it's called, allowing customers to choose what items they'd like to receive. You pay a fee for a standard, bundle of 15 items. There, you pick the items that are delivered to your door. And when you need to exchange clothing, for example, for the next size up, or for seasonal reasons to go away on holiday, or for a winter jacket, winter coat, you choose a new selection of clothes and basically swap them for the old ones. So you return the clothes, which are then assessed for repair, and if suitable, they'll go back into the online wardrobe to be leased by someone else. And you, as the customer will be sent out your next batch of products. So next up is another video. It is essentially about the kind of leasing or the service model, but it's a really great example of actually how circular economy starts to pull some of these different elements together. So you'll hear in the video some chat about kind of design as well, and some of the logistics of take back and things. So this is Isle of Bikes, and hopefully this one's going to play fine.
In the 1920s, some top light bulb makers realised that they weren't selling enough bulbs and that their businesses were in danger. Their solution, radical for the time, was to make their product worse, so that it would have to be replaced more often. It saved their industry, but today it is costing us the earth. Economies across the globe have adopted the model, and the rate of consumption has accelerated. Manufacturing everywhere is based on taking raw material, making products, and, when they are finished with, throwing them away. Today we dump an enormous 2.1 billion tonnes of waste, and 99% of the stuff we buy we throw away within 6 months. This can't go on.
Sustainability is a global issue. I think the solutions are going to come from individuals all the way around the world that are motivated to do things differently and come up with smart, practical solutions to the problems that we all face. We're embarking on a new project. It's very exciting, and we're hoping that once again that our customers are going to be very involved and a part of this new adventure for us. We're developing a small range of much more sustainably made bicycles. We will manufacture those in the UK and then rent them. The ownership of the bicycle, and therefore the responsibility for the raw materials, will remain with us. And when one child's grown out of the bicycle, it'll come back to us and we'll refurbish it and then rent it to another child. We're going to have to rethink every step of how we make bicycles, how we provide bicycles for families. And to do that, we will be looking at the way bicycles were made in the past, and then combining that with new technologies to come up with something for the future. It's our aspiration to become the cycle industry experts in the sustainable supply of bicycles. I feel really excited about it and a little bit scared as well.
Here it comes.
The biggest pleasure for me is always when I'm out and about and just coming across a child that's riding one of our bicycles.
Amazing!
Utopia is a bicycle that lasts forever.
So I think that final line there, as I struggle to move the slides on, is, you know, utopia is a bicycle that lasts forever. I think that's something that we want to apply across as many products as possible, really. But obviously that does, in terms of how we deliver that commercially, means a fundamental shift in how products and services are delivered. But I think that's, personally, I think that's quite an inspiring video. So we're getting there. Our sixth strategy is Remanufacture. And as you can see there, that is essentially about dismantling a product and refurbishing it, getting down to a real component level, repairing or replacing each part to produce a new product that is suitable for a warranty, and it's basically done to a quality that exceeds or matches, or exceeds the original quality of that product or the equipment. And that's an approach actually that we see a lot in aerospace, where airplane engines are basically completely stripped, cleaned, worn components are replaced, and then the whole thing is built back up again into a remanufactured engine. But the example that we have is Renewable Parts, who are applying this principle to wind turbines. So they're based in Lochgilphead, and they will take wind turbine components like sort of the gearing mechanism and the turbine itself. They'll test and certify them for reuse, and basically resell them back to asset owners and wind farms. So obviously, in an industry that's, you know, making a significant effort to produce clean and green energy, this is just another way of reducing the impact by helping operators cut costs and streamline operational availability. If you can get into a kind of a program of remanufacture, it potentially avoids downtime, it avoids failures, which can be really expensive in the renewables industry. And also it's a way of tackling the huge kind of material footprint of the renewables industry, which isn't something that we necessarily always think about. We tend to focus on the output, which is green energy, but actually there is a lot of infrastructure involved in that. So circular economy is a way to make infrastructure heavy industries fully or kind of more holistically sustainable. Our seventh strategy, reuse. It's probably the simplest one there is. It probably doesn't need much explanation. It is basically continuing to use products as they were originally intended for as long as possible. And that approach will always be more sustainable than creating new products. It's more sustainable even than recycling products, which can be energy intensive, and it avoids obviously disposal as well. So really reuse is kind of the original and best. It's a no-brainer. In our case study here, Beauty Kitchen, they're a Glasgow-based skincare company who are dedicated to building sustainability into every aspect of what they do. So they've developed what they call the return, refill, repeat model, where these bottles, which are aluminium, are reused to create a circular packaging system. So customers can either post empties back or return them to a participating store like Boots or Holland & Barrett, for example. So it's accessible on the high street. They're then returned using reverse logistics to Beauty Kitchen, who clean and refill the containers and make them ready to be sold again. So they're developing that service for their own products, but they're also looking to extend it out as a kind of a service offering to other businesses who are interested in refillable packaging models. And that's a good way as well to think about how you can incorporate circular economy maybe into your own business. It's not necessarily something that you have to do and innovate yourself. It's how you can actually look to kind of buy in or tap into existing circular solutions that someone else might be offering. Number 8 is repair, which again, a fairly simple concept that probably doesn't need much explaining, but unfortunately it has grown less common in today's society, where the relative cheapness of goods makes it easier and often more cost effective just to buy something new than to repair it. But I think that is beginning to change. I think people are becoming more eco-conscious, and businesses are starting to take advantage of that movement and offer up more options for repair. And of course, we've got the right to repair movement as well, and European legislation that will support that in terms of maintaining parts and parts for kind of historic products. So our case study, Cashmere Circle, is a relatively new company, though. It's a startup that just launched last year, about 18 months ago, I think. So they offer a repair service for cashmere, which is typically tricky to repair, as I understand it, because of the nature of the fibers. But obviously it is also a high value fabric. So, you know, a cashmere purchase tends to be more of an investment piece, and as such you want it to last for a longer time. But if you do eventually put the elbows out in your jumper or whatever, Cashmere Circle can amend holes, they'll remove stains, and they can revive the yarns to make the cashmere as good as new. And it's all kind of offered as an online postage service, and it's kind of brand or product agnostic, if you like. It's accessible for any sort of cashmere item. And finally, our 9th strategy, sharing economy. So thinking back to that idea of the car being parked up for 8% of its life, how can we make valuable assets more used and more accessible? So in this kind of model, a business retains ownership of the product and basically allows it to be shared out within the local economy or through a digital platform or framework of some kind. So things like Zipcar, Santander bikes, or First bikes, Next bikes that you might have seen on street. These are all a good example of sharing economy in action. And it can apply really to anything. It works particularly well for high value assets, but it can essentially apply right down to kind of consumer good level. And our case study here is the Edinburgh Tool Library. So they offer a subscription, basically an annual subscription that gives you access to literally thousands of tools, ranging from garden equipment right through to kind of power tools and various other things. So it makes it far more cost effective and accessible to individuals. It removes the need for everyone to own an individual drill or a sander, a wallpaper stripper, random things like wood chippers that you might only use once a season in your garden. So you don't need to have it. You don't need to have it all the time. You can access it when you need it, basically, from the tool library, and then return it. And that maximizes the use of that item. But it's also a pretty kind of convenient way for the consumer to access things as well. And then we have a second case study here, actually, which is the Open Adventure Library, and they provide the same kind of service for things like, it's all kind of outdoor equipment, so like paddle boards, surfboards, wetsuits, all this kind of big stuff, that we don't necessarily have space to store in our own houses, but that we would want to access to kind of do all of these kind of outdoor activities. So you can see the range, hopefully, of what's doable there. So those are our 9 strategies. Hopefully you've found some of them kind of quite interesting, inspiring, and maybe some of them have been relevant to what you're doing as well. And just before we wrap up and get to the Q&A, where we can hopefully talk about some of these things, I've put together just some thoughts on how you can maybe incorporate circular economy into edge applications. So we've already seen there are different options and combinations of options that companies can use when thinking about making the shift to circular. And as I kind of alluded to before, it's not only about thinking differently within your own business, but thinking about what options are out there already that you can actually tap into or potentially support further. So it's not necessarily about reinventing the wheel in terms of the next big product to fix climate change, although that would undeniably be awesome. But through the 9 strategies, we really want all businesses to be circular by default. So it's about embedding as many of the principles as possible, not just into your products and services, but into the very fabric of how you're operating as a business. And it comes back down to that kind of point about design as much of this in as early as you possibly can, I think. And you can see that there. It's never too early to start thinking about them. In terms of products, demonstrate that you've thought ahead. So think about the end of life at the very beginning stages. Think beyond your own processes, think beyond recycling and energy, and consider how you interact with your customers and consider how they interact with your products and your services. And think about what you can do or enable others to do. And then finally, I think have a plan, get it down on paper, so that aspirations, actions and timelines are all clearly captured. I think quite often, we all assume that this is going to happen. We know that we want to do it. But if you don't kind of capture the individual steps, sometimes it can get lost in the day-to-day. So those are just a few kind of ideas and reflections from our own experience of working with businesses. And finally, everything that I've kind of blasted through today is online on our website. We've got a few more tools and resources up there. So if you found any of this kind of interesting or inspiring and you'd like to explore it a little bit more, please head over to the Zero Waste Scotland website and to our accelerator site. And there's a whole host more case studies and various kind of toolkits and guides up there as well that can help you get started on this journey. And we, of course, are always open to speaking to anyone that is interested and wants to follow up. So we offer kind of specific support, but we're also happy just to have a very general conversation. And my email address will come out with the slides when they get shared. So that is me. And I guess I'll hand back to Stephen, but I think we're just going to open it up really for Q&A now. I'll stop sharing.
Peter, thank you so much for that. It was great to go through that again. I've seen it a couple of times now. It's still, you always learn something when you go through it. There's always something to pick up from it. And it just, hopefully, the whole purpose of this to open up your opportunities to share what you're doing as a business in terms of circular focus. And there's so much more to it. I think going through the 9 strategies and principles, that's where it really brings it to life, I think, for me. And what's really interesting is the examples you used, Peter. I think half of them were very early stage edge winners. Mm-hmm. So these are businesses who have come through the edge competition and stood out because they are doing something in terms of their circular focus. And these businesses were identified mainly because of that. That was the whole purpose of their business, and that's what made them stand out in the edge competition. The other thing that's really sort of quite compelling for me is when you go through the edge application, before we get to ask any business about what you're going to do turnover, what you're going to do sales, what you're doing about your customers, before you get to any of that, we're asking you about your circular economy focus. So it shows you the priority levels, and I know every question is equally important, every section is equally important, but the discussion from our judges will come to circular economy and your overall impact and your net zero focus before we actually get into any discussions about ambitions around sales and all these things. So it shows you where priorities are sitting just now. So it is a really important area to make sure you answer that question really well on the application, because it's the type of question that really gets judges in the current climate that we're living in. It's the type of question that really gets judges to buy into the ethos of your business and how you're trying to go about things and the sort of impact you're trying to deliver. If you can demonstrate a really strong circular focus, then it sort of helps showcase that positive sort of values that you've got installed in your business. So make sure that it is important, and it's one of the reasons why we deliver this workshop, just to showcase that it is a priority area for us, but it is also an area that businesses can answer probably better than a lot of them do in the application, and hopefully this is a chance to open up other ways of thinking around for you. But Peter, apologies, I've had a couple of questions, but my doors just went. Can I jump in and get that?
Yeah, of course.
Question, please.
Yeah, so Jamie, I think has had to dive off now actually, but Jamie's question was, what if a company creates a product or service which creates jobs further down the chain? So I'd be interested to know a bit more context around that. But I mean, I think what I would say there is that certainly one of the wider benefits of circular economy approaches is that because of the innovation, the kind of creativity and the skill sets that are involved in delivering, you know, some of the strategies that we talked about, like remanufacturing, for example, and repair. Yeah, there are opportunities for wider kind of job creation and upskilling, and building in those kind of higher value opportunities, which are definitely strong. So the wider social and kind of community benefit, I would say, is one of the key things around circular economy as well that we need to factor in. So yeah, I mean, I guess maybe Jamie's question is, does the job creation offset the kind of impact of the product? It's not necessarily a straightforward question to answer, but I think there's definitely a benefit to that job creation. But at the same time, we would encourage everyone to think about how the impact of new product development and new product creation can be minimized as far as possible. Yeah, that would be my kind of initial thoughts on that one. So I don't know if anyone else has any follow-up questions.
I do. Thank you very much for the presentation. So my business is a SaaS related business, so software as a service.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just wondering if I think yeah, of course, yeah, it kind of facilitates circular economy, you know, where like, yeah, students instead of downloading the program on their laptop, is hosted on the cloud. That takes less PC power, longer life of PC. Universities will not require hosting servers and stuff like that. So you don't have a lot of servers and their maintenance and all that. And then that's deposited in landfills and all that. So I think the major question I'm asking is, would in terms of the benefit, can we really claim that we are a circular economy business? That's one, or we're just facilitating it? And how do we get any maybe support from even Zero Waste Scotland based on that business model?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I mean, the benefits definitely that you've outlined are real. We've actually just thinking about our own experience, we're moving away from issuing physical laptops to everyone, so we're home based at Zero Waste Scotland, but we're actually moving to a virtual desktop approach, and the rationale for that is pretty much what you've just outlined. It reduces the kind of IT burden and the wear and tear on equipment. So there is definitely a significant carbon saving to be made from moving to that kind of cloud-based approach. So I think you could say you're enabling circularity in others, but I think in terms of you being a circular business, probably what I would say is just to kind of reiterate to some extent the point that I made earlier. It's not necessarily the product or the service that you're delivering, although obviously that's important, but it's how you as a business are actually operating as well. So in terms of your own resource use, for example, and in terms of the the equipment and the kit that you actually have on site, how are you procuring that, and what are the arrangements that you've got in place for that in terms of extending the life of assets and facilitating kind of repair and reuse and refurbishment. So what happens to the kit that you kind of wear out? Does it go back for reuse? Does it have a secondary use? That kind of thing. And also, we maybe forget about a lot of this stuff because it doesn't seem quite as exciting as the really kind of creative, innovative parts. But something as fundamental as office furniture, that the desks and chairs and the carpets and everything that you have in your office, there are ways that you can access those through some of the models that we talked about. So there are companies out there who will provide furniture as a service. You just get what you need for as long as you need it. If it gets damaged, they will take it back and repair it and just kind of replace it for you with a like for like replacement. And the same with carpets, which can be high wear, but there are companies out there who provide service or leasing models for carpets, and they'll maintain responsibility for maintaining the quality of what you have. But when it reaches a point in time that it becomes worn, they will take it back and kind of repair it or refurbish it somehow and put it back into circulation. So again, it's thinking about everything that you do in the round, not just what the core of your business is, that I think can make you a circular business. And the second part of your question was about what support is available from Zero Waste Scotland. So we provide a range of things. So we have non-financial support, which is kind of about business development, kind of market engagement type support, feasibility studies, that kind of thing, for earlier stage businesses. And then we have, or we will be launching, another grant fund, which is about kind of practical support to make investments in infrastructure. Tends to be higher kind of capital type purchases, but there's a broad spectrum of support. And basically what we would encourage anyone to do is just to kind of come and speak to us, because we can be quite flexible. If you have specific needs, we can probably find something in our toolkit that will support that in some way, even if it's just kind of advice or guidance or signposting to other partners maybe, or facilitating introductions to potential clients or customers.
Peter, just to follow on for that, obviously we work very closely with yourselves, but we're trying to sort of share as much the stuff that you're doing in Zero Waste Scotland for applicants, and we've built it into the portal now. So when you go through the questions on the portal, there's a link into the Zero Waste Scotland sort of circular economy page on that particular question. And again, a lot of that information you can sort of tap into and try and just give you a lot of the stuff that some of the stuff we've covered off today, but again, it just reiterates all the stuff that you can work on too. It's not just about your physical product or service that you're delivering. It's more wider than that you can think about. Lots of things to take on board. Any other questions from anyone?
Stephen, one from me. Obviously, within the circular economy section, you've only got 100 words. So you've obviously been asked this question before about some of the sections this time, haven't you? So if we've got if we can't fit into 100 words, is it worthwhile just putting on like a little attachment to the back of the what do you call it?
Yeah, I think, Jamie, I think you've answered the question. Yeah, like what we made a conscious decision at the start of this round was we were trying to have shorter, sharper questions to get to specifics and get the key information, because a lot of the words, the previous questions were combined questions and it was quite heavy text boxes we were getting. So we have to sort of reduce it slightly. If for any question, not just the circular, if there's any question you think I can't get my full answer in here, please just add an attachment part to it, and we'll sort of take that into account because this is a kind of learning for us as well at Edge. We're sort of we've revamped the application process this time. If there's any particular questions that businesses are struggling to get the full story across in the allocated word count, then we will do, we'll review that going forward. But James, yeah, just use the attachments bit if there's a particular question that you need to expand on a wee bit more, and we'll take that on board.
Perfect. And can I just say thanks, Peter, because there seems to be quite a lot of different views on circular economy. I mean, I've been promoting our business as a kind of a circular economy stroke net zero focused organisation, and then I speak to some people and they say, oh no, that's not circular economy, it's all about recycling and reusing. So what you've kind of shown today is kind of put me back on the kind of trail that I was on before, where I think we are a circular economy business.
Oh, that's good. I think, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the challenges of it. There are a lot of different interpretations and the language is used differently. So that, you know, the kind of what we're trying to do with this session is just get that consistent kind of level. And I mean, the reality is there is no one thing that makes, you know, a business circular or not circular. It's all about the interplay between the different elements. And I think as well, it's actually, you know, we talk about circular businesses, but it can be quite difficult to do it on your own in isolation. I think the reality is a lot of it is about the system that we operate in and how you interact and collaborate with other businesses and indeed your customers as well. So I'm glad it's kind of reaffirmed your commitment to it. That's a good outcome.
And Jamie, the partnership we've got with Zero Waste Scotland is exactly for what you said there. It's trying to get a mind shift away from people thinking circular economy is about taking a product and doing something different with it and recycling it. It's so much more to that, and we're trying to get that mindset into the early stage businesses that we're working with through Edge to show there is a lot more to it than that, and there's a lot more thinking around it, and that learning from the early stage businesses is translating into our judges as well, and it's having that sort of wider sort of message. So hopefully by getting really more and more great answers on the circular economy question and hearing about the things that the businesses are working on and doing to drive that agenda, that'll sort of transpire into a sort of wider message across the business community in Scotland. So hopefully it's not just about recycling a product, there's more to it, and it's glad that you've come on today and reaffirmed that, which is good.
Yeah, thanks.
Anything else for Peter? Any other final questions? I think that might be us. So Peter, thank you so much for sharing that information with today. I think it's really interesting, and I'm sure that hopefully the guys have taken away quite a bit.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I hope it has been useful, and I hope my droning on wasn't too much for everyone over lunch. But yeah, we'll send everything round, and like I've said a couple of times, happy to field any queries or questions after the fact. Just get in touch, it's not a problem.
So we'll get the link sent out for sort of playback of this, and similar to people there, is if there's anything from us at the Edge team you can do, whether it be the circular economy question or any other questions, any other parts of the application, please just get in touch. We're here to do is help. So please use us. So thank you for joining us. Go and grab some food and lunch, and appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing your applications and particularly your circular economy questions coming in on Tuesday. So good luck with that, everyone, and thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
Thank you.